You are Locked On Bulls Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Chicago on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Bulls Postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. My name is Joe George. You find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92. The Bulls lose 122-106 to the Milwaukee Bucks and move to 6-2 on the season. Today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. So the Bulls lose 122-106 to the Bucks. Giannis, no answer for him. Really think this game came down to two costly runs, but one early in the end of the first quarter, early second, that we'll kind of dive into here. The Zach LaVine heater continued through most of the game. Fourth quarter, not so much for him, but really a really excellent first half again for Zach LaVine when they really needed it in this game. Laughable defense as well for the third segment of the show we'll talk about. Besides just having no answer for Giannis, really just no idea what they were doing out there a lot of this game. Typical Bulls fashion, sloppy basketball, a lot of points given up in the paint. This is Bulls 101 this season. Not much changes tonight versus the Milwaukee Bucks. And look, this is a good basketball team, the Milwaukee Bucks. I know they are now 6-9 on the season. The Bulls are 6-10 after this game. The records, we know they don't fool us. The Bucks started off slow. They're going to be a much better basketball team. They just took down the Houston Rockets in their game before this, who beat the Bulls by quite a bit and ran them completely out of the building on Sunday night. But the Bucks, look, Giannis gets 41 points. Now, most teams in the NBA, if not every single team in the NBA, doesn't have an answer for Giannis. I don't really know what's the beat up on the Bulls in this one when he is just as excellent as he can be. The trade rumors are hot and heavy of what could be of Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I don't know, maybe that's the best thing for the Bulls right now. Not having to go 2 hours up north to Milwaukee and face this guy a couple times a year, because my God, he's incredible. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA, in a team even without Chris Middleton, who you can't rely on if you're the Bucks. Just really had their way with the Bulls. Now, before the game, we got a couple little nuggets here that are not great for the immediate future of the Chicago Bulls. The first one here before we go into the game: Lonzo Ball out through at least next week per Casey Johnson, and then Patrick Williams is out at least next week, possibly more. Was back in Chicago getting some x-rays done and everything before the game today. So not having him and not having Lonzo will continue to hurt this team and really make it hard to really understand who the Chicago Bulls are in the 2024-2025 season. But it's kind of what we expect, right? We expect LaVine and Patrick Williams and Lonzo to miss time throughout the year. But just this next stretch is going to be really challenging for the Bulls for at least the next week, as these next two guys are at a minimum of then. But look, this game's 30-30 with 47 seconds left to go in the first quarter. And then really where the game immediately gets away for the Bulls, once again for the first time, is they give up a 16-0 run by the Milwaukee Bucks. And really, now the Bulls, once again, same old Bulls, they're fighters. They clawed back into this game. They got it back within one at one point. But when you let a team like Milwaukee get up on a 16-0 run and it's 30-30, and then all of a sudden it's 46-30 into the second quarter, they just keep digging these holes that they cannot get themselves out of. And Zach LaVine's playing pretty good basketball while this is all happening. I mean, in the second quarter, he was doing everything he possibly could to keep the Chicago Bulls in this game, but they just let it get away from them again. And the thing with the Bulls that I think is the most infuriating this season is that specifically when they play really good basketball teams, that's when it feels like they are at their sloppiest. At one point in this game, you'll see they get it down to 2 points, and then they have another turnover. That's really bad by Io. Or no, it wasn't by Io, but the next position, Io gets stripped by the Bucks. So even when you have a chance to get back into this game, sloppiness just kind of gets away from you. And the Bulls just, it's who they are this season. But you got to find a way to stop letting up these runs. I mean, even as great as Giannis is, of his 41 points, 25 of them, I believe it was, came in the third quarter. So it's not like early in this game he was the reason why they were running away with it. A lot of that, I think, is what we'll hit on in the third segment of the show, where there's just laughable defense in this game. Now, what's nice about this is that the Bulls go on, the Bucks go on this 16-0 run. The Bulls respond with a 7-0 run. The Bulls get back-to-back threes to get it down to 11 at one point again in the game. They force the turnover, and the Bulls are only down by 12. And at this point, Zach LaVine has 20 points on 6 of 8 shooting. He's 3 for 5 from the three-point line, 42% from the three as a team in the first half. So they're shooting the lights out. Like they shoot the ball very well in this game. And this is the part of the Bulls that we're going to discuss the entire season, as long as I think they keep this core group together, is that even as you're scoring 42 points or shooting 42% from the three-point line, you're down by these significant margins because, again, they just have no defensive answer, not just for Giannis, but any team that is efficient in the paint. And I don't really know what the answer to that is. Like, they just don't have it on their roster. But with Patrick Williams being out, one of the things I want to highlight early here in the show is I thought Torrey Craig was a lot of fun to watch. He shot the ball pretty well. He played good defense in this game. So even though you lost Patrick Williams, I don't feel like that's any kind of excuse for the Bulls to lose this one. And look, like I said at the beginning of the show, if you missed it, the Bucks are 6-9 now. They're just a better basketball, or maybe it's 6-9. Now, they're just a better basketball team than you are this season. The records are similar, but we know the reality. Now, look, the Bulls very quickly, Zach LaVine gets 25 points in the third quarter before he once again kind of vanishes in the game, whether it's when he's out and even when he's back in. He's not an immediate answer for the Bulls in the fourth quarter, but the Bulls get it down to 8. A Vooch 3 gets it down to 5, and Dalen Terry and then Torrey Craig, they hit threes. They get back down to 1. So they're right there in the thick of this game. They've got a chance to win, but as pointed out here in the chat, which we'll kind of hit on a little bit in the third segment of the show, bad rotating, bad game plan on the pick and roll stuff. Anytime Brook Lopez was involved, I cannot believe the stat they showed there in the game where he has 6 seasons with basically no made threes, where he's terrible, and then 6 seasons where he's made over 100. How he has changed his game is remarkable. And while all this is going on, and while Zach LaVine is pretty good until, the fourth quarter where he disappears, this is probably one of the worst games we saw from Vooch this year. And when, Nikola Vucevic and Kobe White go a combined 12 for 30 and for a total of 28 points, it's just not enough. I mean, you only had, early on in this game, Zach LaVine was the only guy in double-digit scoring, and by the end you end up with 5. Dalen Terry eventually gets to 10 points, and Kobe White and Vooch and Torrey Craig all get to at least 14. But you're just missing that, in a game like this where the Bucks go on this 16-0 run at the end of the first, into the second, they just don't have that answer. And the Bulls are keeping it close. They're down by, I believe it is 4 when Giannis checks back in with 7:31 left to go. That's also when Zach LaVine comes back into game. So they answer guy for guy in the fourth quarter, and then very quickly the Milwaukee Bucks go on an 11-0 run, and I think like 9 of it came from Giannis. He was all over the place. Great point here, again, in the chat. Some guy named AJ Green, don't know who he is. Guess his dad's a coach. They tried even talking about his high school days on the ESPN broadcast, and guys he played with. Didn't know those guys either, and I feel like I know quite a bit about the NBA. It's not like Dame, the ghost of Damian Lillard a little bit is really dominating you here in this game either. It's AJ Green and Giannis. Like, I can live with Giannis. 41 points. And they, I guess we're trying everything. It's startling watching a team play basketball, and one possession Kobe White is being posted up by Giannis. One possession, it's Phillips. One possession, it's Dalen Terry. There's the size mismatch. It is so crazy in those moments that I can't blame them for not being able to lock down Giannis. So few players in the league can. Like, was it probably like 4 guys in the NBA that you would trust in that moment to shut down Giannis? But he's just doing everything he can at will. And, AJ Green, coming off the bench in this game, what did he end up? He ended up with 18 points in 27 minutes, 5 for 7 from the three-point line. And Bobby Portis, only 8 points, but a guy who felt like he was a little bit everywhere. And, Dame did get 20 for you, or for the Bucks in this game. But the fact that the Bulls had it down by 1, they just could not overcome, the sloppy basketball play, that 11-0 run in the fourth quarter. And this is more of what I think we do expect from the Bulls this season, is they're going to hang tough with these teams. Like, they're not going to quit. They're going to get down big early. They're going to battle back with some really good shooting on some nights, on most nights, frankly. And then they're just going to kind of let it slip away because whether it's defensively, a real lack of shooting, I think this game and the last probably two is really seeing like that big dip again from the early 45% three-point shooting from Josh Giddey. He is just, God, he can't shoot. Him and Io both are just terrible. And if you could get anything offensively from these guys, it makes me kind of wonder what the Bulls would be doing this season if they would just have a little bit, maybe it's another win or two this year, but those guys are just, they're terrible right now from the three-point line. And I've said it multiple times now through these shows. I think Io will figure it out, but Josh Giddey just quickly losing confidence, and he can keep shooting it, but my gosh, like he just cannot make anything. It's brick city for Josh Giddey on a pretty consistent basis. I mean, he's 2 for 9 tonight. Like he misses bunnies. It's not just threes. Like Josh Giddey misses some of the easy stuff. And you go back to the last game when he dunked, it was his second dunk of the season. You can't play him in the fourth quarter because he's a defensive liability. It hurts you clearly in the first quarter when these teams are going on runs. Like Josh Giddey is a huge part of that problem. It's just looking like a slowly but surely looking like a worse and worse trade as we're going, looking at Twitter during the game, and all of a sudden I'm seeing these Alex Caruso highlights, and I get why they traded him, but the idea of just getting Josh Giddey back it's tough. When you need another bucket getter on this team to try to stop these massive runs that teams are going on, and then him and Io are just not either good enough offensively, or Giddey, not good enough offensively or defensively just to stop Milwaukee from going on these multiple runs in this game. So not a fun one for the Bulls tonight, 122-106. Like I said, they get it back down to 1 at one point in the third quarter. And they had a shot when, they closed the gap when Giannis is not there in the fourth, but without LaVine on the court there, and then kind of going ghost mode a little bit in the fourth quarter, they really just find no way to overcome the Milwaukee Bucks in this game. Let's talk about Zach LaVine, what he's doing in this one, because it was an impressive performance. And, from the fourth quarter of the last game where he had 18 points to what he did in the first half, having 20 points in this one, it shows you again like how valuable he can be. But he's on a heater, and just, something I pointed out in the last postcast show that I want to hit on here again in the positive way. We'll do that next year. It is the Locked On Bulls postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. You missed out on the $250, but now they got the $150 for you. That still helps you out quite a lot. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've been telling you guys how important that is of a tool to get all the information you need on the same page where you place your bets. It just streamlines that whole process. So go to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. You get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 bet. When you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, so in this game, Zach LaVine starts off really strong once again. One of the things we talked about in the last show is getting Zach LaVine involved a lot earlier in this game. The Bulls did that. Even though, at the end of the second quarter, or into the first quarter, into the second, the Bucks go on this 16-0 run. Zach LaVine's obviously not on the court for all of that, but he gets 20 points in the first half, and he's super effective. I mean, he's fueling it right now from the three-point line. He's attacking the basket really well. Would still like to see more from him. With Josh Giddey, as we touched on there at the end of the last segment, if he's not going to be a great shooter, I need more from him as a playmaker offensively. Like I'm okay if Josh Giddey can't shoot, but him and LaVine got to find a way to connect on these backdoor cuts and alley-oops and things like that we've seen back in a couple years ago. It feels like back in the day at this point. What we saw from Zach LaVine and what we saw from Lonzo Ball together. Josh Giddey can replicate some of that, but they did use Zach early. But it was pretty evident right away, I felt like, as we all were watching, that, Vooch was just not going to have the type of performance that he had this season. He was working hard on defense, and getting worked over most of the game, but Zach was just really getting whatever he wanted at the end. And I didn't realize this. Billy Donovan, talking as we, are doing this show live here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Look, the Bulls got it back down to 1, but the Milwaukee Bucks did have a 20-0 free throw advantage in the second half, which is obviously a crazy margin, 20-0 in the second half. But I'm going to put that some of that on the Bulls. Like, that's, to me, and Billy Donovan said that's not the reason why they lost this game, but it's the one thing with this style of offense that I think you can really pick at and say is flawed for the Bulls, not just on the nights where they're not shooting well, but because they don't attack the paint, regularly. You have athletic guys like Ayo and LaVine, and Josh Giddey should be able to, in theory, attack the paint, but Kobe White can draw fouls. When you're not drawing fouls like we are, I think, going to see this season, where it's not this extreme 20-0 in a half, but there are going to be times where they just don't get to the free throw line quite enough. And when you're not getting to the free throw line, you're not getting to the paint. Like, it's great you're shooting well in a game, but you're just not going to win a lot of basketball games. And that's what we see as the Bulls move to 6-10 on the season. And this is probably just who they are. Like the reality is slowly setting in for the Bulls in this season, where I think the point of, they're not bad enough to have the top 13.5% odds or whatever to win the lottery. They're probably also not good enough to actually make the playoffs. And outside of the play-in tournament, they could fight for the play-in tournament. But like, there are teams like the Philadelphia 76ers who as we do the show, they have 2 wins on the entire year. So you think that balances out at some point this season. So, it was good to see what we got from Zach LaVine in this game tonight. And he really is just the only reason why they were in this game at all. It's just, he was spectacular again. And, look, it's so hard to figure out like what the answer is to the Bulls. And like, I'm honestly, I'm fascinated. Like, as we get really close to December here, it's November 20th, doing this show, and the trade deadline will be here before we know it. And I'm still not convinced like the Bulls totally blow this thing up. And, it wouldn't shock me if Reinsdorf, instructs the Bulls to try to do something within the margins to, just be a little bit better. And I would start in the paint defensively, because even though not every team has a Giannis, there's still obviously plenty of nights where, the teams are scoring 60, 70, 80 points in the paint, and the Bulls are scoring in the 40s in the paint, in the 30s, and maybe the low 50s at the high points in these games. So, even with the free throw stuff, as good as Zach LaVine was in the second half, it's still something that I wish they would do a little bit differently in these games, where, it's working, but try to get to the free throw line a little bit just to slow the game down. And I think that really is what was, it's so obvious that they just don't care. Like they just don't care. Like, they're not going to adjust. And maybe it's the right decision. Like, Billy Donovan obviously knows a lot more about basketball than I do, but they just don't ever adjust mid-game, and they're letting Milwaukee go shot for shot for them. But instead of ever slowing it down, they just get reckless with the basketball and end up giving Milwaukee easy points, pretty consistently. But it's just, this is who they are. Like, this is going to be, they're competitive with the good teams, but they're not a good team themselves. So they're going to just find themselves, slowly in the fourth quarter, watching games kind of slip away from them when you just don't have that second, perimeter guy that can score consistently. And not like tonight, where Vooch is arguably his worst game of the season. As good as Zach LaVine was in the first half, you're just watching the game as we're watching it tonight versus the Bucks, just slowly but surely slip away from you. Again, shout out to Torrey Craig. Like, thought he played really well tonight. Kind of one of those where it makes you wonder, like, why is he not more part of the rotation when Patrick Williams is is healthy? So, like, that's something to keep an eye on just over, I guess, the next week plus, as Patrick Williams is out, is what does Craig do with his opportunity? And then what is that response from Billy Donovan when you get this team healthier? Because even with Josh Giddey, like, if Lonzo's back and he's out through at least next week, they said, but if he were to magically be back after Thanksgiving and ready to go, like, if Josh Giddey cannot score and he cannot play defense, Like, I don't really understand what the fit and the goal is for having a guy like that on your roster besides all the Australia references from the players he played with, like Patty Mills, or the Iggy Azalea references like we got on the broadcast the other night when she was apparently in attendance. So let's talk about what's happened, why is the reason why the Bulls lost this game, not just because of Giannis's excellence that we saw for the Milwaukee Bucks, but really just some laughable defense that, as bad as things can be in the paint, there is just certain things the Bulls do that they infuriate me. And I think we saw a couple of them tonight, and we're going to point those out next here. My name's Joe George. You can find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92. Hit that subscribe button to the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. A reminder, all the audio is available on the Locked On Bulls audio feed, wherever you get your podcast, whether that's Apple, Spotify, anywhere available. There's so many different avenues. So wherever you listen to your audio, you can find the Locked On Bulls audio channel, or Bears, Cubs, and Notre Dame, because we'll do postcast shows for all of those as well. Let's talk about that defense next and why it was just laughable is the best word I think of it for tonight. Next year on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. You can win 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Join over 10 million users on PrizePicks today. You can sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday each Tuesday. PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineup. More or less, that's what you're looking for. So if you're looking for, Steph Curry threes, if it's 4.5, more than that in a game. Zach LaVine right now feels like his point total or his points, rebounds, and assists, you got to be looking at that every single game with the way he's playing. Vucevic most nights as well. But whether it's Anthony Davis, more than 11 rebounds, Giannis, 29.5, I believe is what it was tonight. You would have hit that easily against the Chicago Bulls because just a major lack of defense. But PrizePicks, always the place to go. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup with code LOCKEDONNBA. PrizePicks, run your game. So besides having no answer for Giannis, once again, I don't know if it's effort, if it's lack of strategic game plan here for some of it. Look, I mentioned this earlier. We'll mention it again here, but the idea that Kobe White or Julian Phillips or Dalen Terry is going to be able to have any semblance of success versus Giannis is obviously not going to happen. Like, we know what the end result of those plays are going to be. He's going to back you into the bucket. He's going to score 32 of 41 points in the paint like he did tonight against the Bulls, and they just had no answer. Now, you're not seeing, and this is where, like to the comment earlier from Skyler, AJ Green, guy off the bench just killing the Bulls. Part of that is the strategy of playing the Bucks is you have to hope that they are going to be ice cold, that Damian Lillard, that AJ Green, that Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez are not going to be hitting their threes because you have to collapse on Giannis. But where I think the defense tonight was laughable, there's a couple moments here where we'll start with Giannis. I don't think they collapsed that much on him. It just felt like these guys were in ISO in the paint, and instead of forcing the Bucks in the second half to take threes, just watching it, and we have to watch it again to know more closely, but they're just letting Giannis do whatever he wants in the post, and instead of forcing the double team, and we're seeing on the flip side, we're seeing Zach LaVine in the last 2 games because he's shooting the ball so well. These guys, they're blitzing Zach LaVine. They're going after him with 2 players to get the ball out of his hands. And I just didn't feel like the Bulls were doing that tonight. Just go after him. Force him to pass the ball. Force Damian Lillard. Force Brook Lopez. Force these guys to make shots. If you had told me the Bulls lost this game 122-106, but Giannis had 20 points and Dame and Brook Lopez had a combined 60 or 70 points just because Giannis kept having to feed them and had 10, 15 plus assists, I'd take it. At least have some strategy. Don't let the best player beat you. It seems like such a simple concept, but something the Bulls seem to really struggle with, where there's the best player is having success and then these nobodies, guys like AJ Green, no offense, AJ Green, because I don't really know who you are just, going off. But the other one that infuriated me, and it almost infuriates me in 2 ways. It frustrates me defensively, but also offensively. There's a couple times in this game where the Bucks are running a pick and roll with Brook Lopez, and the ball goes to Brook Lopez, and whether it's Giannis or Dame or someone else is moving aggressively without the basketball, and Brook Lopez is finding them a shot, and then they're going back to Brook Lopez for an easy bucket. It's really great team basketball that you're seeing in the two-man game from the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bulls don't do that. They don't do that. Like, they give the ball to Vooch, and Vooch goes to work, and Vooch puts up a shot, and hopefully it goes in like it has most of the season. There's not that lack of movement offensively where Zach LaVine is going back around Vooch or trying to find another way to get open. Or same thing with Kobe White. Like, I don't want to pick on LaVine here, but it's very stale in the way the Bulls do it. So if I'm Billy Donovan watching this game, it's like, maybe that's how we should run the two-man game a little bit differently than the way we do. Make it more effective. Find a way to get Vooch and other guys easier shots throughout the game. But so the Bulls aren't doing that, but they also, when all this chaos is happening, like as they're passing the ball back and forth in the two-man game, the other part of it with LaVine on a night like tonight where there's a couple plays where he's a step behind. And it's not, I want to call out effort. I don't want to call out lack of trying, but he's just a step behind the guard in the situation. And they're getting easy shots, kind of peeling around Brook Lopez. And it's just like knowing what you're supposed to do. Stacey King keeps talking about it. KYP, know your personnel. The Bulls, that is one of their biggest struggles this season, is just knowing the personnel on the court, whether it's AJ Green or knowing, what the guys around Giannis are going to do in this game. They don't do it. And so it's just laughable to think that time and time again, Billy Donovan and the Bulls just have no answer defensively. Not for Giannis, one of the best players in the NBA, still MVP candidate. He can be that guy as the Bucks try to turn this thing around this year. But just too often, the Bulls just don't have an answer for the other guys defensively. And it's not the other guys that are just beating you off the dribble, but these little two-man games for Brook Lopez tonight, it just felt like the Bucks were pretty much doing whatever they designed, whatever Doc Rivers was drawing up for them, they were doing and they were executing, and the Bulls just had no answer for it. And I don't know what the solution is. I'm not a solutions guy. I'm just a podcast host here and a radio host, just trying to talk about the Chicago Bulls and a bunch of losing basketball games, because that's what we do. We enjoy it. We love our Chicago teams. We talk about a lot of losing teams right now. The Bulls lose 122-106, move to 6-10 on this young season. We will be back on Friday night for, I believe, another NBA Cup game. It's hard to keep track of what is and what is not a Cup game, so we'll see a terrible court on Friday night live here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel after every single Chicago Bulls, Bears, Cubs, and Notre Dame game. The only team that gives me hope right now and likely to make the college football playoffs. Hit that subscribe button. We will talk to you on Friday night after the next Bulls game. Find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92. We will talk to you soon. Go Bulls, even though they lost.